A church which is a loving community, meeting both publicly and from house to house, sharing and caring for each other's needs, both spiritual and material.
I guess another way that we would want to care for one another is financially, materially, and it says, that there were none impoverished among them, that each one was cared for in early Acts. And how important do you think that is, not only within the local church community, but the broader global church community?
I think both are significant. Just personally reading again through the Old Testament in the Murray McCheyne reading thing, and come again across the passages which speak about mutual care that was built into the structure of the Old Testament and the release of slaves and the caring for one another. And it talks about that no one is in need, that there's a sense of we're in this together. Now, it's very possible that in the Old Testament they never ever fulfilled the kind of standard that was being taught to them in terms of social ethic. But in the book of Acts, when the Spirit fell upon the early church, they immediately fulfilled more than the law required. There was an overflow of generosity, and what God had set before them as a goal, they spontaneously did when the Spirit fell upon them. And there was great grace upon them all. They didn't regard the things they possessed as their own. Now, it takes grace. Great grace was on them, and they didn't cling. It says similar in 2 Corinthians 8. I want you to know about the grace that came upon the church of Macedonia, that in their great poverty, they begged for the opportunity to share. Now, it needs grace to share, because without grace, you cling, you're protective. But when grace falls on a people, then, we want to be sensitive to one another's needs. And a lot of that happens in a healthy church. Not only, hopefully, good giving into the central pool, which I think is perfectly appropriate for the local church, but also a sensitivity to people in need, maybe suddenly redundant, maybe suddenly widowed. All sorts of things happen in life. And you'll find again and again in our churches people rallying, and not even just with finance, people having babies, and people rushing around, do all the cooking, people turning up with meals. It's beautiful. And Paul would collect from the churches in order to help the poor in Jerusalem, for instance, part of the New Testament letters, part of their comradeship together. And we have that benefit of, within the New Frontiers family, of knowing about situations we've known over the years in Mexico, in Africa, in India, where there have been crises. And being in a family like New Frontiers gives us an opportunity not simply to give away to an anonymous organisation. That isn't to say they're not doing a good job. There's some great big organisations doing great jobs. I'm not trying to knock them, but there's great fulfilment in saying, well, we know those brothers, we know the churches, we know the poverty that's there. So we're not giving away to strangers, we're channeling through, and knowing that these people produce the same values in the churches they serve. And it's just a great joy.
We talked before about the church being a kind of an overflow of the love that exists in the Trinity. And I suppose really all that you're saying about the importance of community, church being a community, goes hand in hand with mission, that really if we're going to see people one, they're to be one into that kind of context, not just hearing the declaration of a word by an evangelist that's travelling through, but in somehow encountering this community, this loving body.
Yeah, the kingdom of God is advancing, the family of God is growing, expression of godly love that goes right back into the Trinity is having its outworking, and in very practical ways. And some in our ranks, cultivating expertise. I think of Nigel Ring, and I think of Steve Oliver and our task team for the development of work among the poor. They're not only compassionate, they're learning how to do it. And sometimes in the early days of our trying to help the poor, we sometimes rushed in unhelpfully, and we've had to learn, no, you've got to do it. There are things you need not to do. You can harm, you can set people back by wrongly running in with cash. And so we've got to learn the way to do it. And of course, the things that these brothers would particularly impress upon us is to empower the poor not just give handouts, but to lift people into their own entrepreneurial skills, people who were perhaps getting used to saying, oh, thank you, saying, no, you can do stuff. So that takes more endeavour, more concentration, more work, but I think on a global scale we can go for that.